making sure that there are no bullying instances, intending to and paying attention to who their friends are, what friendships look like.
Welcome to the Autism Channel, where we journey with Carmen to raise autism awareness and move steps closer to inclusivity. Join us as we meet community members, share stories, and explore initiatives that make a real difference.
For many parents, the teenage year marks the start of a new chapter, one where parents need to address issues such as social and emotional development, navigating friendships, managing stress and anxiety, and supporting their child's journey towards a greater level of independence. Now joining us today is Dr. Amber Perymon Evans, Executive Director from the Children's Institute of Hong Kong, who will be sharing with us her expertise in supporting neurodivergent teens. On the topic of supporting neurodivergent teenagers, what are the most common issues that you notice?
Social communication, socialization are a huge problem. Anxiety and depression, huge issues. I think that all teens, it doesn't matter whether they're neurodivergent or not, they all kind of struggle with those things, but our particular teens struggle in a different way because they already struggle with socialization and social communication. Yes. They already struggle with executive functioning skills. And so those combination of things make this huge because also transition and change is huge problem for our teens. And so it's really a problem for them just because they already struggle with change.
And do you see discernible differences between boys versus girls during this phase?
The biggest differences aren't much different from typically developing girls and boys, meaning that girls in the general population that are typically developing often have more anxiety and depression than boys. That's a general thing. It's heightened a bit though with our teenage girls just because they really struggle with socialization skills on top of that. They want to be a part of a group. They want to have friends. They're not quite sure how to do it. And so on top of that, they don't like change, but everything's changing in them, around them. There's changing expectations. And so that often leads to anxiety and depression in our girls. For boys, it's a little bit different in that they experience some of the similar things, but typically if it's not really addressed, they have struggles long term. Their struggles long term are struggles in getting and maintaining a job, often alcohol or drug abuse, struggles with really just maintaining a functional lifestyle because executive functioning is so difficult for our young people anyways. And so if it's not dealt with as a teenager when all those changes are happening, they don't grow up to be adults that can deal with those changes. And so those executive functioning skills in boys are really most relevant at that time.
Well, I suppose this is a very critical stage in life, and I feel like at this point they have heightened awareness and sensitivities too. So as parents, I often wonder if we should introduce to them the conversation of their diagnosis. What is your take on that?
My take has always been, as soon as you know, they know. So.
You mean, how old though? I mean, some of them get diagnosed like at age 2, right? So
absolutely.
When would be a good time to broach the topic?
So there's so many books now in 2025 that can address these different things. And so if you have a 2-year-old, then you should be utilizing the two-year-old tools that talk about autism and so that they grow up understanding it. If you have an 8-year-old who's diagnosed, that's pretty common here that they aren't diagnosed until later, then that should be addressed because they're going to notice their differences. Now, whether they're talking to you about it or not is a different thing, but they certainly notice. So I guess a general rule would be when you think that they may notice, then that's definitely a time when that conversation has to happen.
So in that sense, parents should take on a proactive approach rather than wait for the child to ask them, what's wrong with me, Dad? What's wrong with me, Mom?
Absolutely, because at that point, there's anxiety and there's depression that has already set in because they don't understand why they are different, so to speak. But they know that they're struggling with friendships. They know that they're at least believe they're being bullied on the playground. And they see these differences. And so rather than wait for them to be overwhelmed by it, it's a better opportunity for you to educate them. Teach them about themselves and who they are, and allow them to have a strong sense of self. So when they encounter things, they know what it is. When they encounter bullying, they understand it and know what's going on, and they know what to do with it, as opposed to allowing them to really just struggle in that space.
Now, on another topic, stress and anxiety. I mean, this is something that I think worries a lot of families, because teenager years are times when you actually see suddenly a heightened sense of stress and anxiety because, you know, they're entering high school or they're preparing for adulthood. What tools can we actually assist them with? Of course, I understand social stories is actually...
Executive functioning skills is what they really need to work on. Those are what's really going to help them to navigate. So they need to know how to organize themselves, organize their thoughts. Something that is different in Hong Kong is that our students typically don't do chores, okay?
It's true. Yes,
right?
Yes, yes.
They just don't do chores.
Yeah.
And so what I was seeing was a lack of an opportunity to work on those executive functioning skills so that they could be successful later in life.
Because oftentimes the focus is on the academics.
Right, and only the academics. But many of our students are doing perfectly fine academically. That's not the issue. And they can be strong academically and not function in any other aspect of their life, so it doesn't matter. They're not going to do well in college. They're not going to do well after college, because they're not going to know how to help themselves through these processes. There's so many other things that they must navigate besides school, right? And some families liken school to a job, right?
Yes.
And that is true of typically developing children. That is not always true by any means of children with autism, because there's other things that they have to do to be successful at their job. They have to be able to get themselves up and ready and prepared in the morning. They have to be able to remember the things that they need to do in the evening in order to be successful to transition into that morning. They need to be able to navigate relationships that have happened in the workplace, at home, if they're married, or whatever relationships that they have. And they have to be able to regulate themselves emotionally and not allow it to go into their job experience, right? And those are things that our young people typically have a difficult time with if they don't know how to navigate that when they're younger.
So giving them chores is a good way to help them develop executive function.
It is an excellent way of developing executive functioning skills, because it teaches them how to organize themselves. It teaches them how to start and stop when they're supposed to. Our children struggle with initiating, right? Initiating and stopping when they're supposed to stop something. So it kind of forces them to push themselves in a way that's uncomfortable for them, and then it becomes natural to them.
The next topic is a serious one, I suppose. What are some of the red flags that parents should always watch out for during the teenage years?
Wanting to be alone, and increased time in wanting to be alone. Okay, more time in their rooms, more times on the computer, on the internet. All teens want to do that. All teens want to do that. But our teens struggle with that in a different way, because it's hard to get them out of that, right? For typically developing teens, they can come out of that pretty easily, just because they can there's an ebb and flow. They can go in with their friends, and they can go back to their room. They can go in with family, and they can go back to our room. Our teens typically don't operate like that. They don't want to do the family and the friend part. They just want to be in their space.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the part that's problematic, is because it's hard to get them to change that.
So once they're into that zone, it's very hard to actually...
It's very hard to get them out of that. And so that's a problem when you might be looking at some anxiety and depression setting in that you want to pay attention to. Them, especially for girls.
What are some of the signs?
Not eating is a big one, particularly for girls. Decreased eating is a big one. That is not typically the case for boys. They're typically eating more, so that's not one. But for girls, definitely. More time on the internet trying to create opportunities for friendships. Let me give you an example. So I have a 13-year-old. She likens herself to be a content creator, okay? And she is passionate about her friendships on YouTube. Obviously that's not a thing, right? But she believes these people who are commenting are also her friends, okay? And this is a new thing for her, and she's doing it more and more, and it was recently that I heard her identify them as friends. And so we had to take some steps back, of course, to say, wait a minute, let's define friendships. What does that mean? But she was also doing this thing where she started playing games, and her friends in the games were her friends also. Not friends at school, not friends in swimming. She's in some other activities. None of these people are her friends, but these people that she games with are now her friends. So listening for things like that, listening for how much time is spent, or attending to, how much time is spent gaming and what is happening in those games. Those are things that really need to be paid attention to, because I think for now, right now, children can envelop themselves in the internet. They just can. And neurotypical teens too, absolutely. Our teens just often don't know the difference between a friendship and not a friendship. And there's predators that have to be paid attention to. They need to know what the difference is. So some rules that we have with our teens is you never show your face, you never tell your location. Having those conversations and understanding the difference, watching your child's interactions online is a huge one. And I think those are where the biggest cues come from.
It's a delicate balance too, I think, for parents, because most teenagers are obsessed with screens.
Absolutely.
Screen time.
Absolutely.
So it's really about being vigilant as well to see what kind of content they're actually accessing.
It's very important.
When should parents seek professional help when they see these signs?
I like to be proactive, okay, so I'll start with that if that's okay. I think that having a psychologist involved in your space when they're preteens will prevent a lot of this stuff. And that's because they're going to be sure that all of those things that you need to work on in preparation for long-term issues is addressed. All that's going to happen. They'll ensure an opportunity for communication. So that's going to happen. It's a barrier that we won't have to deal with. I would even suggest that working with the school that your child is at and making sure that, not making sure, but understanding how they're also understanding your child, making sure that there are no bullying instances, attending to and paying attention to who their friends are, what friendships look like, if they're interacting with other peers or not. Just doing some of those proactive things will be very beneficial. Now, if you haven't done that and they are a teenager, always get them a therapist. I think it's really important because it's beneficial. It's somebody that's not mom or dad, or auntie, that can really help them to navigate the world around them. It's always beneficial to start there. But really, if we're looking at some families, that's not an opportunity for them. They don't have that opportunity.
Not the time, not the resources.
They don't have it, absolutely. And so sometimes just having open communication with them is just very important. Getting online and looking at there are plenty of books online that will talk about your changing body, your growing body, and help them to understand kind of some of the changes that will happen. Do that as soon as possible, and that will really kind of guide them through navigating and understanding their own selves. If they can understand themselves, they can grow up with a better sense of self, and they can reduce some of the stressors that come with the anxieties also that come with all of the many changes that are going to happen.
So being proactive in a sense would actually eliminate a lot of future issues.
Absolutely. For parents who want to learn more about their child's condition with autism spectrum disorder and ABA, please join us at the second annual Autism Community Summit. It will be held at the Asia Society. We look forward to seeing you there.
Please click on the link below to access ticket purchase information. Well, thank you so much, Dr.
Thank
Perymon,
you.
for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.